At the University of Toledo, we are surrounded by experts. And we tap into those experts here on Rocket Talk.
It's a celebration. The University of Toledo turns 150 years old this week. And today on Rocket Talk, we're talking to a historian and author about the institution's past, including some tidbits that locals might not even know, and a UT administrator about the future of UToledo and higher ed in general, including some big challenges that we all face. Dr. Risa Dickson is the Interim Provost and Executive VP for Academic Affairs. She has years of academic and administrative experience from universities across the country and expertise in budgetary models. This as UToledo moves to a new budget model. She's also focused on student recruitment and retention and fundraising. And Professor Barbara Floyd. She says she's retired, University Archivist and Director of Special Collections. She served for 31 years and she's still working. She's authored books about Toledo's history, including the latest, this one right here, An Institution for the Promoting of Knowledge, the University of Toledo at 150. Thanks to both of you for being here today. Professor Floyd, I would like to start with you.
Sure.
What's one thing about UToledo history that even the locals don't know?
Well, I think one of the things that we may have known at one time but have sort of forgotten is that for 83 years, the University of Toledo was supported and funded exclusively by the taxpayers of the city of Toledo. It was a municipal institution. It was not part of the state's system of higher education. And the people of Toledo from 1884 until 1967 invested millions and millions of dollars in this institution and its growth from a very small, struggling manual training school in 1884 all the way up to 1967 when we finally joined the state system of higher education. And I think that investment is so important because it shows the commitment of the people of Toledo to this institution. And I think it's important both for the university and the city to be reminded of that long history and how important the city was to what we are today. So I hope that people take this opportunity at the 150th to celebrate how the city changed the university and the university changed the city.
Kevin, if you could pull up photo number one. Professor, tell us a little bit about what we're seeing here and the very beginning of this university.
Okay, well, this is actually one of the locations that the university was housed in from 1914 until 1922. It was an old elementary school located downtown. And we, as an institution, sort of lived in all kinds of inadequate spaces that we made into our university, and this is one of them. The university itself was actually founded in 1872 by a gentleman named Jessup W. Scott. He was a landowner. He owned much of downtown Toledo, a very wealthy man, and he also owned a piece of property near where there was supposed to be a railroad terminal built, which was going to be the largest railroad terminal in the Midwest. So he decided quite late in life that he would donate 160 acres of land as an endowment for a university. And the reason that he did this was because he believed, he actually wrote a little treatise about this, that the future great city of the world, bigger than London, Paris, Rome, New York, was going to be Toledo, Ohio. And he was absolutely convinced in looking at all of the natural advantages that Toledo had, that it was going to become the biggest and greatest city in the world. And as part of that dream, that sort of feeling that he had that this is where it was all going to happen, I think he decided that such a city would need a university. And so that's the reason why he decided to establish what was then called the Toledo University of Arts and Trades.
Wow. So, Professor, every institution has highs and lows. Mm-hmm. Looking back on UT's history, can you think of a particular low point? And then my next question is going to be a high point in the university's history.
Well, its early years were really very bleak. As a matter of fact, it was founded in 1872, but in 1878 it actually closed its doors. It had so little support. The railroad terminal that was supposed to endow the institution was never built because of the Panic of 1873. The institution had no money. It was located in an old church building downtown. The only classes it offered was drawing and mechanical drawing. And so it closed its doors. So that was truly a low point. But in 1884, the remaining trustees, after Mr. Scott died, he died in 1874, his children took up the mantle of the university and convinced the city of Toledo to take over the assets of the university. And it continued to struggle because there were power struggles between city and politicians and university administrators over funding in particular. The city was never able to really fund the institution properly. And I think the low point was probably around 1909 to 1911. In 1909, the president was so desperate for funds that he pointed out to city council that they had just spent $2,400 on an elephant for the zoo. And it seemed to him that the university should get more money than that, but they were given exactly $2,400. And after a fire in 1911 in one of the buildings, the trustees were just ready to pack it up and leave and forget about it. And thanks to some connections that one of the trustees had, they were able to find a new location. They were paid the bills out of their own pockets, and it survived to live another day. So that period of time between its early founding and about 1911, 1914, when we moved into that building that you saw on the screen a few minutes ago, it was really precarious, touch and go every step of the way.
So Dr. Dickson, no surprise to you, it seems like securing funding has always been an issue.
Yes.
What are some challenges facing higher ed in the U.S. just in general? And then I'll ask you specifically about UT.
So I think generally what we're finding is that there's a huge drop in enrollment that seems to be surprising a lot of people. However, we've known for 20 years that the enrollment was going to go down because birth rates went down. So part of this is trying to figure out what the role of higher education is and right-sizing our institutions. Among that, we're talking about kind of a political climate where we're arguing for funding. Hopefully we'll be worth an elephant or more moving forward. The return on investment, you hear this a lot in the political arguments, is what is the return on investment for education? Is education leading in terms of jobs? We have issues with budgets, resources. Part of what's happening is technology has changed the way our students think. It's changed our disciplines. Our disciplines tend to be relatively technologically and heavy as we're moving forward. So how do we find a funding model that works with enough flexibility to allow us to continue to be relevant and innovative and serve our community? So generally, in higher ed, this is what we're dealing with. Specific challenges for UToledo as we move forward, I think it's very important that we always understand and remember our history. And as we lead forward, it's important to put us cleanly within our community. What is our relevance and importance to the community in terms of the programs that we offer, in terms of the value that we offer for our communities? What does it mean to be an educated citizen in Toledo? And then finding ways to fund that with appropriate priorities. So we're going to be seeing a lot of program prioritization, a lot of shifting of budget funding models, and I think looking for alternative ways to fund our educational programs.
So we're talking about the 150th anniversary. Dr. Dickson, what does UToledo look like 20, 30, 150 years from today?
So I say this a lot to people and to groups. One of the most important challenges for institutions right now is to understand what its niche is, to figure out, again, what communities it serves, what value it offers, who the communities are, our regional communities, our national communities, our state communities, our disciplinary communities. So I think we are going to get more strategically focused. We're going to get more specifically focused in terms of what it is we need to do to meet our identification of who we are. Who are we as an institution? Who do we want to be for the next 20, 30 years? I think one of the things that institutions have not had to ask themselves up to this point is, who are we and who are we serving for what purpose? That's the big question right now for all institutions. And once we understand that, we'll know who we're serving and why we're doing what we do in service to those communities.
What are some of your specific goals as a leader of this institution?
So I would love to provide stability and when I leave, have a budget model that provides a direction and a prioritization of where we need to go. It's going to be a huge culture shift, but that's what my biggest priority right now is, to provide the structures that are needed to move forward and the budget clarity in terms of where we're going.
So with about 30 seconds left, Dr. Dickson, what advice do you give to other leaders in higher ed and the future leaders at UT?
I think we need to understand that the pivot and the change that's coming is huge, and we need to keep our eye on the horizon. We are creating the future of higher education without a template moving forward. We have to understand that. We cannot continue to think outside the box. We have to get the box off the table and ask, what are we doing, for what purpose, and what does it look like if it's working well? So I really think that the future of higher education, for someone to truly lead forward, they have to be able and willing to take the risks that are necessary.
Thanks to both of you for spending some time with us today, and thank you for watching. That's all the time we have today. We'll see you next time on Rocket Talk.